I want you to imagine something for a second. Um, imagine reaching into your wallet or your bag right now, pulling out your primary bank card, grabbing a pen, and writing your PIN in down on a sticky note.
Okay.
You slap that sticky note right on the card. Now, I want you to imagine handing that card over to someone else in your life, and not just handing it over, but walking away without a single fleeting moment of hesitation,
Oh, wow.
right? No creeping anxiety, no late-night panic, just complete peace of mind. So here's the question for you listening. How many people in your life right now could you do that with?
Honestly, when you really force yourself to sit with that scenario, the mental filtering happens almost instantly. I mean, most of us start crossing off names, and that list gets very short very quickly.
It really does.
Yeah, it's a pretty brutal test of who we actually rely on.
Welcome to today's deep dive. We are starting with that incredibly uncomfortable visualization because today we are unpacking a single, deeply fascinating source.
Yeah, it's a really interesting one.
It's a philosophically rich essay from March 2024 titled, "A Beautiful Life is Composed of People Whom You Trust," and it's written by an author named Swifeng.
Right.
Our mission today is to explore a truly radical paradigm shift in how we measure a successful life. We are looking at moving entirely away from the traditional metrics of success, wealth, status, power, and focusing completely on one single metric, the metric of absolute trust.
And Swifeng operates from a premise that completely discards the tangible accumulation we normally associate with a good life, like your title, your stock portfolio, the square footage of your house. In his framework, those are entirely irrelevant.
Right, they don't matter at all.
Exactly. He argues that if you have 100 people you can completely trust, your life is the most beautiful it can possibly be. And conversely, if you don't have a single person worthy of that complete trust, your life is the most pitiful, regardless of how much money or power you wield.
It was a striking absolute binary.
Yeah.
We need to establish exactly what Swifeng means by complete trust.
Yeah, we do.
Because, well, I might trust my coworker to finish a presentation or my neighbor to watch my dog while I'm out of town, but I am certainly not handing them my life savings on a sticky note.
No, definitely not. And the distinction between casual reliability and complete trust is really the foundation of this entire essay. Swifeng is not talking about someone being punctual or dependable.
Okay, so what is he talking about?
Well, he defines complete trust with 4 distinct, uncompromising pillars. First, you are willing to entrust your very life to this person.
Wow, your life.
Yes. Second, you're willing to take on any responsibility or obligation on their behalf. Third, you're willing to hand over your wealth to them without a shadow of a doubt.
There's the bank card.
Right, exactly. And fourth, you are willing to share your deepest, innermost secrets with them without any fear of being judged or harmed.
Okay, hold on. Entrust your life, assume their obligations, hand over your wealth, and share your darkest secrets.
That's the list.
Giving 100 people unrestricted access to my life savings doesn't sound beautiful. It sounds financially suicidal. I mean, how does Swifeng justify this without crossing the line into pure recklessness?
That's a fair question.
We are taught our whole lives to diversify risk,
Yeah.
not to hand our entire livelihood over to a massive group of people.
You are hitting on the exact friction point that makes his philosophy so radical. From a secular financial perspective, it looks completely reckless. But Swifeng is defining trust as the total absence of the self-preservation instinct in the presence of another human being.
The total absence of self-preservation. That is intense.
It is, and he justifies this not by claiming that everyone is inherently trustworthy, but by defining the ultimate goal of human connection. He observes that in secular society, if a person manages to find just 3 to 5 people they can trust to this degree over an entire lifetime, it is considered quite remarkable.
Just 3 to 5 people.
Yeah.
In an 80-year lifespan, that is considered a win. And he wants us to aim for 100. It exposes this massive vulnerability deficit in how we live.
Absolutely.
I mean, if 3 to 5 is remarkable, aiming for 100 feels like we're being set up for failure, doesn't it?
Well, he sets the bar at 100 to illustrate just how defensive our default posture really is. In modern society, our relationships are heavily mediated by boundaries, contracts, and mutual self-interest.
Right, we protect ourselves constantly.
We do. So by contrasting the societal norm of 3 to 5 people with the staggering goal of 100, Swifeng is framing this as a complete rewiring of how we interact with humanity. He is asking us to imagine a life where the defensive structures we spend all our energy building are no longer necessary.
So if the psychological payoff of this trust is supposed to be so massive, the immediate question is, What does that actually feel like? Because honestly, dismantling all my protective structures sounds exhausting and terrifying.
Sure, it sounds scary at first.
But Xuefeng argues that the exact opposite is true. Right? He lays out this deeply internal emotional landscape of possessing or lacking this kind of circle.
He does. The contrast he paints is visceral. He argues that having a large number of trusted people physically alters your perception of reality.
How so?
He writes that it makes the world feel larger. You feel fundamentally secure, optimistic, confident, and he even uses the word romantic to describe this state of being.
Romantic. That's a really interesting choice of word. And the flip side is what he calls the bitter journey.
Yes, the bitter journey.
If you have few or zero trusted people, you are plagued by anxiety, you perceive constant threats, and you feel helpless and pessimistic about the future.
Yeah, exactly.
But I want to dig into the mechanics of this. Like, how does trust physically alter our perception of the world? Think of mistrust like running a massive antivirus scan in the background of your computer 24/7.
Oh, I like that analogy.
It takes up 90% of your RAM. You have no processing power left to actually use the computer for anything creative or romantic because the system is entirely focused on scanning for threats.
That is the perfect analogy for the mechanism at play here. In psychological terms, that background scan is hypervigilance.
Right.
We spend an immense, unquantifiable amount of cognitive energy every single day, guarding our image, protecting our assets, curating what we say, and anticipating betrayal or judgment.
It's exhausting just thinking about it.
It is. When Sufeng says the bitter journey, he isn't just using a metaphor for feeling sad. He is describing the literal neurological exhaustion of constant threat assessment.
Think about your own daily commute, your office politics, or even how you navigate social media. We are constantly wearing armor.
We are. And armor is heavy.
It really is.
So when Sufeng says that having trusted people makes your world feel larger, he means that when you uninstall that antivirus software, when you put down the armor, you get all of that cognitive RAM back.
You're no longer confined by the walls of your own defensive perimeter.
Precisely. The optimism and romance he describes aren't magical thinking. They are the natural psychological byproducts of suddenly having a surplus of mental and emotional energy because you are no longer expending it on self-defense.
Okay, so if the mental payoff is getting all our RAM back and finally stepping out of that exhausting hypervigilance, our immediate instinct is to figure out how to acquire this network.
Naturally.
We want the 100 people. And our instinct is usually to use the tools we already have to build networks. Like we try to become more successful, make more money, gain more influence.
Which is exactly what we are taught to do.
Right. But Xue Feng explicitly warns that those exact tools are the poison.
He is completely unequivocal about this. Xue Feng states flatly that relying on money, power, fame, seduction, or status will never lead you to find people worthy of complete trust. Never.
Not even a chance.
No. He even goes a step further and argues that relying on these worldly metrics might actually lower the trust others have in you.
I want to look closely at the irony here, because think about your own career for a second, Ray. Have you ever chased a promotion or a pay raise or a bigger title specifically because you thought it would finally buy you some peace of mind?
I think we all have at some point.
Yeah, we are conditioned to believe that wealth and power are the ultimate insulators against the world. We think, oh, if I just have enough money, nothing can hurt me.
It's the classic global dream, really.
But Xu arguing that by doing that, we're actually building a fortress that keeps true security out.
Let's examine the mechanics of why worldly power fails to generate trust. What do power, wealth, and seduction actually do? They compel behavior.
They create influence.
Yes, influence. When you have power or wealth, you can make people do what you want, or you can make them stay near you. But compelling behavior is not the same thing as creating safety. In fact, it creates the exact opposite.
Transactional relationships.
Exactly. Because when power or wealth is introduced into the dynamic, the relationship shifts from mutual vulnerability to mutual utility. You can never be entirely certain why the other person is there.
Are they loyal to you, or are they loyal to the access and comfort your status provides?
Precisely. The tragedy of worldly success, according to Xuefeng's framework, is the pervasive shadow of doubt it casts. You cannot be certain how those around you truly feel.
It infects everything.
It does. Xuefeng points out that even your worldly relatives and lifelong friends fall under the shadow if the relationship is tethered to financial or social leverage.
Which brings us back to that incredibly uncomfortable diagnostic tool we started with, the bank card.
Ah, yes, the sticky note.
Shuofeng doesn't just theorize about this doubt, he demands that you test it physically.
He argues that if you have any doubt about whether your relationships have reached this level of complete trust, you should try handing over your wealth or your bank password for safekeeping.
And he says if you hesitate, it proves that you don't truly trust them, or at least not completely.
It is a brutal test.
It really is, because it completely bypasses our ability to rationalize. I mean, I can tell myself, I trust my best friend implicitly. I can tell myself we are like family.
Sure.
But the moment I hold out a sticky note with my PN on it, the body doesn't lie.
That physical reaction is the ultimate proof of Suofeng's point. That split-second hesitation, the tightening in your chest, the sudden mental calculation of risk, that is the lingering presence of fear.
And where fear exists, complete trust cannot exist.
Exactly. Transactional relationships, built on the shifting sands of status or mutual utility, simply shatter under the pressure of the bank card test. They lack the foundation of absolute vulnerability required to pass it.
This paints a pretty bleak picture of secular networking. If money, status, fame, and even our own families can't reliably help us reach this magic number of 100 trusted people, where are we supposed to find them?
Well, Shifeng doesn't just drop this impossible problem in our laps and walk away.
Right, he presents his own deeply spiritual solution.
He does, and this is where the essay pivots from psychological observation into a deeply spiritual doctrine. Shufeng claims that these 100, 1,000, or even 10,000 completely trusted people can only be found on the way to heaven.
On a way to heaven. That is a massive tonal shift from discussing bank pins and career promotions.
It really is.
He is introducing a spiritual framework,
Yeah.
and he anchors it with a very bold personal testimony.
Yes. Shufeng claims to have personally found over 100 people whom he can completely trust. He states that he can confidently place his money in their pockets and put all his assets under their names without a single worry that they will claim ownership.
Wait, so he is asserting that he currently lives the bank card test with over 100 individuals?
That is his claim, yes.
He is living the reality of having uninstalled the antivirus software. But the result of doing this is what I find most challenging.
Oh.
Yeah, he describes the psychological shift that happens when you reach this state. He writes, when I have over 100 people I can completely trust, I myself become insignificant.
Yes, that's a key point.
But wait, when you say I myself become insignificant, or as some might phrase it, the dissolution of the ego, that sounds like intense spiritual jargon.
It does sound like that.
What does that actually look like on a Tuesday afternoon? In a society that constantly tells us to build our personal brand, to stand out, to be the main character, is becoming insignificant, a loss of our individuality.
It is crucial to understand the mechanism behind this insignificance, because he isn't talking about becoming worthless or depressed. He is describing a radical shift in the focus of his daily existence.
Okay, walk me through that.
Think back to the hypervigilance we discussed earlier. Your ego, your sense of a separate, vulnerable self, is largely constructed out of the need to protect yourself from others.
Right.
If you truly have 100 people who hold your life, your obligations, and your wealth, the boundary between your resources and their resources dissolves.
So on a Tuesday afternoon, it looks like waking up and realizing that working for your own gain makes no logical sense anymore, because your well-being is entirely decentralized among these 100 people.
Exactly. The focus shifts entirely from self-preservation to serving the collective. Suofeng states that working hard and creating wealth for those he trusts becomes his life's greatest pride and happiness.
It isn't a void. It is an overwhelming sense of connection.
Yes, and in fact, he notes that within this state, any hint of selfishness makes him feel deeply ashamed. He views acting selfishly not just as a mistake, but as a betrayal of the Almighty and of life itself. The ego doesn't just fade. It becomes fundamentally incompatible with his reality.
So Sufeng operates from the premise that the self simply evaporates into the collective trust. And he leaves us with this final sweeping law of his philosophy.
Let's hear it.
He says, the more people we have whom we can completely trust, the closer we are to heaven. Conversely, the fewer people we have whom we can completely trust, the closer we are to hell.
And based on everything we've unpacked, he isn't using heaven and hell merely as destinations after death.
Right, they're not just places in the afterlife.
No. In Schweffing's framework, they are present-day psychological realities. They are the daily environments we inhabit, determined entirely by our proximity to absolute trust versus absolute isolation.
Heaven is the expanded, romantic, optimistic world where your cognitive RAM is fully yours, where you don't need armor, and where serving others is a joy, not a risk.
Beautifully said.
And hell is the bitter journey. Hell is the exhaustion, of constantly guarding your bank card, curating your image, and scanning a hostile world for threats.
The geography of his heaven and hell is entirely relational. It is built entirely out of the people around you and your capacity to drop your defenses around them.
So let's pull all of this together and look at the whole picture. We started by examining Shui Feng's radical definition of trust.
A four-pillar system of entrusting your life, assuming obligations, handing over wealth, and sharing secrets without fear.
And we looked at how astonishingly rare this is, with the secular norm being just 3 to 5 people in a whole lifetime.
Then we explored the literal cognitive exhaustion of the bitter journey, how the hypervigilance of navigating a low-trust world drains our energy.
And how finding trust physically makes our perception of the world feel larger and more optimistic. After that, we analyzed the trap of worldly metrics.
We looked at why chasing power, fame, and wealth to feel secure actually backfires, creating transactional relationships that shatter under the weight of the bank card test.
And finally, we discussed Shuofeng's spiritual conclusion, that building this vast network of 100 trusted people requires moving on the way to heaven.
A path that ultimately leads to the insignificance of the ego, where self-preservation is replaced by the profound joy of serving those you trust.
It is an incredibly challenging framework to lay over our normal lives. So I'm going to bring this back to you listening right now. Take a moment to survey your own emotional landscape today
Yeah, think about your baseline level of anxiety or your baseline level of optimism.
and consider how closely that maps to the number of people in your life that you truly, deeply trust. How much of your daily exhaustion is just the weight of the armor you are carrying?
It forces us to ask whether the goals we are chasing, the promotions, the savings accounts, the status, are actually making us feel safer or just more isolated.
But I want to leave you with one final thought to mull over, something that builds on this entire philosophy. Shuofeng argues brilliantly that dedicating everything to the people you trust eliminates your own selfishness.
He does.
He points out that the world is full of transactional, unreliable dynamics. But consider this. If absolute trust requires the complete surrender of your own ego, your own resources, and your own secrets, perhaps the real barrier to finding those 100 people you can trust isn't that other people are unreliable.
That's a profound shift. It is much easier to blame a hostile world than to examine our own posture toward it.
What if the bottleneck isn't out there? What if the real barrier to building a beautiful life is our own deep-seated, paralyzing fear of becoming completely vulnerable? What if the reason we can't find 100 trustworthy people is simply because we are too terrified to become perfectly trustworthy and perfectly open ourselves?
That's the real challenge, isn't it?
It's a lot easier to say people can't be trusted than to ask yourself why your own hand shakes when you hold out that sticky note with your PIN on it. Next time you look at your bank card, maybe ask yourself not who is worthy of taking it, but what it would take for you to finally be ready to let it go.